What's going on, fellas? Man, welcome back to the Del Tales podcast here, man. This is the NFL Week 4 rundown. Let's get right into it right away because I don't want to even wait. This one was a good weekend. Let's start with the Cowboys and Giants since they opened up Thursday night. Man, Dallas is still struggling in some weird ways. Is it just me or they just can't figure it out? They definitely have talent all over the field, but for some reason, they're just not putting that talent together the way that they should, and I'm not exactly sure I understand why. I think Dallas is showing up, showing us that they're definitely right now, they're not a Super Bowl team. That's for sure. Because that defense needs far too much work. They can't stop the run. On the offensive side of the ball, they can move the ball at random times, but it's not dependable right now. Both teams in this game only scored 6 points in the second half. That goes for Dallas and the Giants. The Giants are not great right now. Daniel Jones, he did throw for what? 281 yards, completing 20 for 29 passes and one interception. Dak Prescott himself went 22 for 27, 221 yards and two touchdowns. So it's not like they're actually playing bad. That's the weird part. The stats show a different story versus what we see actually on TV. CeeDee Lamb played pretty well in this game, but I think the star of this game, even though, he did not get a touchdown, was Malik Neighbors. I think we all just have to accept the fact that he was definitely the star of this game. Malik Neighbors is turning into an NFL star. And if I was the Giants, knowing you drafted Malik Neighbors, I don't know why they let Saquon Barkley go. I'm not exactly sure if they thought through that one completely. That was such a big mistake. Such a big mistake. And Malik Neighbors having Saquon Barkley take the pressure off of him, which is exactly what Saquon actually needed in New York. He just couldn't get another player that actually took the attention off of him so he could shine. Now they're both missing that same element. Well, Saquon no longer, but Malik Neighbors definitely is missing that element, and that should have been Saquon. But now they have to go find another Saquon Barkley, and that won't be easy because that's a generational talent. Because Malik Neighbors will definitely need some help on that team. Let's switch over to the Bengals Panthers now. So, with the Bengals in this game, this was one game that they were not allowed to lose, right? Andy Dalton playing against his old team, but at the same time, I guess it's a good thing that the Panthers actually lost this one because I think if the Panthers would have won this game, it would have been really bad for Bryce Young's career. I think it would have been over for the Panthers and Bryce Young, and they would be looking to trade him immediately or do whatever they can to get, through this contract in the meantime, or even look for another quarterback in the draft, or worst case scenario, like I said, it probably would have been to trade him. But the Bengals are still kind of wishy-washy right now. No one really knows what's going on with them. They have all the talent in the world that they need. They don't have the best offensive line, but Joe Burrow gets the ball out of his hand pretty quickly. They're just not winning games. I mean, they lost to the Patriots, and I'm a Patriots fan. I still don't fully understand that game right now. Maybe they're just getting the rust off at the beginning of the season, and maybe they're downplaying how good some of these other teams are in the NFL. I don't really know what's going on, but the Bengals are definitely going to have to get it together. But for some reason, they're still able to put up 24 points for the Panthers, that is, and they still lost to the Bengals in a tough game. Over the next few weeks, it does not get easier for the Bengals. Literally, they have the Ravens, and then they play the Giants, which they should be able to win that game in theory. They play the Browns, which they always struggle against. They have the Eagles, which is a tough game once the Eagles decide that, they need to play football again. Then they have the Raiders, a tough game. They go back and play the Ravens again, followed up by the Chargers, and then the Steelers. Nothing about the schedule gets any easier for these guys. Let's move on to the Saints Falcons. So I definitely think that the Saints wanted to remind us that they're almost like the college football team of the NFL right now. They can put up a lot of points and they can score a lot, but they missed some opportunities in this game against the Falcons. The third quarter was kind of a dud for the Saints and the Falcons at the same time, but the Falcons were definitely able to scrounge up enough points to just win 26-24, walk away with a 2-point win. The Saints, like I said, they're known as that college team right now that can put up a lot of points in the NFL, but they somewhat have a Big 12 defense, which is kind of weird because they're not playing the best defense. So if you have teams that can put up points, it's just going to be a shootout to the end. That's pretty much what it's going to be. The guys on the other side of that football are getting paid as well. That's all I got to say. Jags and Texans. Now, this was definitely an exciting game that kind of keeps you the front edge of your seat, on your toes, the whole nine. This was a great game. I just want to start by saying the Texans have a bullseye on them right now. They are definitely the leader in the AFC South. They're the no. There are multiple teams in the AFC South now that have wins, but the Jaguars are still winless. It seems like everybody wants to have a defensive scheme set up for just C.J. Stroud when they play them. You know, and of course, the first team that got this successfully done was the Vikings 2 weeks ago because they played very well against the Texans. By confusing C.J. Stroud, they were able to shut down that offense, and it worked very well. The Jags, on the other hand, they come into to Houston winless, and they're looking to do the same thing to get their first win and pull it off by trying to confuse C.J. Stroud. But the coaches on the sideline and, the video they were able to have of the previous plays and things of that nature actually helped C.J. figure out the whole scheme of this defense to lead him down for a 24-20 win in the end. The Jaguars definitely tried to pull some defensive schemes off from the Vikings. They definitely watched the tape. It just didn't work out as well for them. But at the same time, you got to pay attention to the first 3 games. This is not the same defense that the Jaguars showed up with in this game against the Texans. The Texans coaches are definitely getting a lot better at recognizing these schemes and putting C.J. Stroud in better places to be successful. But one thing I will say most of all for the Texans is that the plays take far too long to develop. They're taking way too much time, and that's kind of one of the problems when you have such great athletes as receivers, is that you can go down the field, get 10, 12, 15 yards instead of just focusing on that first 5, 6, 8 yard routes and just working your way progressing down the field. You always have that shot down the field, so it gets kind of dangerous when you do that. But nonetheless, for the Texans, I think they can call more plays to get the ball out of C.J. Stroud's hands quicker. They definitely got to clean up those offensive line penalties. I don't really know what the problem is with all of those. But one thing I will say, if you're a Texan lineman, you're at home wearing a blue jersey. If your opponent, like the Jags, are wearing white jerseys and you're wearing wet gloves, you're going to get caught. Holding anything like that, you're going to stand out. Wear white gloves. It'll go with your jersey, and it'll be much harder for the refs to tell it when you're holding someone. In football, we all know holding happens every play. The question is, were you caught or not? But we know it happens. That's all I'm going to say about this game. Next, we go over to the Broncos and the Jets. Now this was one of those uglier games of the weekend right here. The Broncos are definitely looking like they're taking the NFL truly seriously this year. Over the last 2 weeks, that is, anyway. I can't believe that they still lost, Jerry Jeudy to the Cleveland Browns, and they're still doing this well in the first 4 weeks of the season. Bo Nix only threw for 60 yards. That was kind of a weird stat to see. Aaron Rodgers threw for 225 yards and still didn't throw for a touchdown. But at least Cortland Sutton, at least for Cortland, was able to help the Broncos get a touchdown from their running back. And, what's actually crazy is Cortland normally had 3 receptions for 60 yards. So think about this real quick. Bo Nix total completion yards were 60 yards. Cortland himself had 3 receptions for 60 yards and 1 touchdown. Bo Nix completed 12 passes, though, for 60 yards. What's going on here? This either, I don't know, this one kind of played around with my head a little bit. Make that make sense, though. Bo Nix went 12 for 25 for 60 yards. Cortland had 3 receptions for 60 yards and 1 touchdown. Bo Nix had 12 for 25, 60 yards and 1 touchdown. I'm trying to make that make sense, but I'm kind of struggling a little bit. Next up, we got the Packers and the Vikings. The old Green Bay Packers, they run into the Vikings. This is an old rivalry game between these two teams. The Vikings have figured something out. And I don't know what they're doing really, but they're doing a really good job of confusing quarterbacks. They're lining up on the line as if they're blitzing, and then they're backing up into a cover two or a cover three, or then it's man coverage, or there's a nickelback that's hidden in there as a linebacker, but he's on the line, so you can't really tell he's a nickelback. They're doing a lot of things to really confuse quarterbacks, and whoever's drawing up these defensive schemes, obviously their coordinator, is doing a hell of a job. 2 weeks in a row, we see he's just confusing these quarterbacks to the point where he's making them make mistakes, especially with Jordan Love in this week. He's just coming back from injury. One would think that the stats looked really good when you looked at how he played. But when you really pay attention to the game, you realize that the stats don't really tell the story. He threw for 389 yards. He had 32 completions out of 54 attempts. He threw for 4 touchdowns, but he had 3 interceptions. That's a lot. We cannot ignore that at all. And when you really sit back and you really look at the game, if you didn't watch the game, check out the highlights. You'll see those interceptions were really the difference in the game for the Packers losing by literally 2 points. If they could have just kept the ball a little bit longer, had longer drives and stuff like that, they would have won this game. But those 3 interceptions were really crucial in this game. I'm not sure if right away I would have brought Jordan Love back instead of having Malik Willis play in this game, or maybe if Jordan Love threw the first 2 interceptions, I try to bring in Malik Willis just to give Jordan Love, a break. Let him look at the game from a different perspective, and hopefully he picks something out from that defense instead of being live on the field and you lose the game by 2 points. Steelers Colts. This was an interesting game, and I don't think anyone was surprised by the performance of Justin Fields putting it out there. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Even Justin Fields came out and said the coaching is so different between the Chicago Bears and the Steelers. I mean, it's night and day, and you can see it on the field, The Steelers are actually developing this team around their quarterback, Justin Fields, right now. The play calling supports his game style. If he needs to run out of the pocket, he definitely can. If he needs to scramble for some yards, he definitely can. He's definitely a man out there that the defenses have to game plan for. And the Steelers are using that to their advantage that the Bears never did, So we have to keep reminding ourselves, people, even at the NFL level, coaching matters. And it can make all the difference in the world. Just because they're professionals does not mean they cannot be coached. Justin Fields, he went 22 for 34, 312 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and also rushed for 2 touchdowns. Whew. I mean, these are some crazy stats here. But the story of the game really kind of came down to Joe Flacco in this one, because he came in for an injured Richardson. He went 1 for 16. I'm sorry, that is way wrong. He threw for 268 yards, 2 touchdowns, and it was enough for the Colts to win by 3. I mean, he played very well. There's nothing more I can say about that. But once again, another team that has a great backup in Joe Flacco. Well done, Colts. That's a good pickup to have. Rams, Bears. When it comes to this game, I think Caleb Williams is starting to find his groove in the NFL. I think he's starting to slow the game down in his head, and nothing is too fast for him. It's starting to make sense to him now. And as many of the mistakes that he was making in the first 3 games, he's starting to let those mistakes go now. And this is kind of what the Bear fans, if this is what the Bears fans have to look forward to in the near future, I think the Bears are in a really good place. He threw 17 for 23, 157 yards, 1 touchdown. DeAndre Swift carried the ball 16 times for 93 yards, which is pretty solid nowadays, and got a touchdown himself. DeAndre Swift also has 7 receptions for 72 yards. A lot of offensive production from him alone. So this was a great game for DeAndre Swift. Los Angeles Rams, man, Matthew Stafford, this was just one of those bad days. Bad day at the office. It is what it is. Shrug it off. Go on. He didn't play terribly the whole game. He went 20 for 29, 224 yards and 1 interception. This is definitely not going to help you win in the NFL. Now, we have seen a game where the Browns lost the game due from 6 field goals. The other team did not score a touchdown. It was just 6 field goals, and the Browns still lost after scoring touchdowns. So, yeah, we've seen some crazy things. That was the first time in NFL history, though, so it's never been done before that. Eagles, Buccaneers. So now, this game, I think, was the shocker of the weekend. Because in all honesty, we think of the Eagles as a pretty solid team in this league. I mean, they're definitely Super Bowl contenders. Sure, we have to remember though, they still have problems with the more dominant teams in the NFL, whether it's the Chiefs, the Saints, the 49ers, stuff like that. Especially in the NFC, they got a lot of competition there. But they have not looked quite the best in the last 4 weeks, though. We can all agree to that. Jalen Hurts, is not necessarily playing bad. Saquon Barkley is really saving this team right now. Their receiving core, great receiving core. They're keeping them in games, but it's just not enough. It's just not enough. They're just not putting the game together and actually winning, which is kind of weird to say because Philly has a great team. Now they run into the Buccaneers this weekend. Baker Mayfield, once again, is playing lights out. He really does look like a franchise quarterback now. No one's questioning that anymore. He threw for 347 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Jalen Hurts threw for 158 yards and 1 touchdown. Saquon Barkley himself carried the ball 10 times for 84 yards. But in all honesty, this was total domination by the Buccaneers at the end of the day. Now, I'm really curious what will start happening in week 12, week 13, week 14, where we start seeing the Eagles record and we can start to predict if are they a threat for the Super Bowl this year in the NFC or are they just out of the picture at that point, because we'll really start to know a lot more about them. So normally we would think that they are playoff guaranteed. I mean, I think everyone thinks that the Eagles are going to make it to the playoffs, but I'm not quite sure right now if this team is ready to make a deep run into the playoffs and potentially the Super Bowl. I just don't know. But that's what makes football fun, man. You still got to play the games. Regardless of what we think, they have to go out there on the field and play. So we're going to find out one way or another all the questions that we have. We're going to find out one way or another all the questions that we have for this Eagles team. And the Buccaneers, might they be the shocking team in the NFC this year? I don't know, but they're definitely, I think, the best team in the NFC South right now. But we're going to find out. This is going to be an interesting game right here. All right, we come up to my boys, the Patriots and the 49ers. Well, this game was not very fun for me to watch. I am a Patriots fan. I just have accepted that the Patriots, I think, are the worst team in the AFC East this year, right now. I think I have to agree to that. I don't think I can argue any better than that right now. I think they are the worst team in the AFC East. But throughout this entire game, I'm sitting back in my mind and I'm going, what are the coaches thinking? Why have we not seen Drake May yet? But on the other hand, I'm sitting back there and going, there's a lot of rushes going on. There's a lot of pressure being put on Jacoby Brissett. I don't know if they want Drake May in there taking all this punishment right now, which is kind of messed up to say, because then it's like looking at Jacoby Brissett and saying, hey, thanks for taking those hits. But, ultimately, the truth of the matter is, I don't know if this offensive line can really protect Drake May the way that they really want. I hope Drake May is definitely ready to play. I wanted him to get drafted to New England, which they did, which was a nice addition, I think. But we got to be able to see what he can do, especially if this season gets out of hand real quick. Jacoby Brissett, we know what he is. He's definitely a good quarterback in this league. Not great, but he is definitely a good quarterback. We respect everything he's done. He's been in New England multiple times. He sat behind Tom Brady. He knows a lot. But we also know he's not the future of the team. So we also have to be able to see, your number 3 draft pick. We have to know what the future can do, and we have to know if he can play. Don't wait until the season gets out of hand and then try to find that out. At least give your team a chance to be successful. But they definitely, I think over the next few games, I'm not even going to go over too much over this game because it was domination by the 49ers. There's not too much to say about this, but I think over the next few games, if New England decides to just throw away the season, bring in Drake May. That's all I'm saying. I want to see what he can do, and I want to know what his progression is from coming from college, going into his first year in the NFL, and seeing what he can do. I want to see his progression over time. We know this offensive line, once again, is not the best to protect the guy. We know the 49ers, Brock Purdy and them boys, are out to play, and they're one of the best teams in the NFL, especially in the NFC. As I was mentioning, the Eagles, I think the 49ers are definitely one of the best teams out there. Brock Purdy is a great quarterback in this league, and that boy needs to get paid. You know, there's not much more that I will say about this game because really what I learned is that we know Jacoby Brissett is not the future. That's just what we learned. We already know what the 49ers are. They're going to be a tough team to deal with in the NFC West, and there's going to be a lot of work for any team in the NFC to make sure that team doesn't make it to the Super Bowl for that side. So there's not really much more to say. Commanders and the Cardinals. Man, this was wow. The Cardinals are a team that I'm not fully understanding right now. You win your first game this season by remembering you drafted Marvin Harrison Jr., and then you forgot immediately after that point in your 1-3. What are they doing over there? Who's coaching this up where they're like, we're not going to get the ball to this guy? Now, they did throw the ball to him 5 times this last game for 45 yards, and he actually did score a touchdown. But Kyler Murray played pretty decently, 16 for 22, 142 yards, and that one touchdown went to Marvin Harrison Jr., but then they didn't go to him much after that. James Conner carried the ball 18 times for 104 yards, got a touchdown. That's pretty solid stats there. But the true story of this game, if we want to be honest with ourselves, is Jaden Daniels. His play was amazing. That boy can play the game. I cannot believe the coaches at Arizona State University ever let this boy leave for LSU. They should have done everything that they could to keep that guy around. Right now, definitely he has the highest percentage of completions in the NFL. He's playing like he's been in the league for 5 years or more. He almost looks like C.J. Stroud from year one, but really I'm going to compare him more to Lamar Jackson because he is more athletic than C.J. Stroud. I think teams better watch out for Washington Commanders because as long as they can keep this team healthy, this quarterback going, and this offensive line protecting him the way that they are, they're a dangerous team to deal with the entire season. So I'm excited to see the success of Jaden Daniels in this league, and I can't wait to find out what he becomes. Chiefs Chargers. Woo. This one was this was one of those tough games of the week as well. This is one of those games where the Chiefs just had to survive. That was really their mission of this game. Survive this game, live to play another day. The Chargers have definitely established themselves as a running team first. J.K. Dobbins carried the ball 14 times, though, for 32 yards. That's not so good. The Chiefs' defense was definitely ready for this, and they knew that the running game is what the Chargers will try to establish. Patrick Mahomes came out and did his thing. He is who he is. We don't have to tell you much about Patrick Mahomes. It is what it is. Justin Herbert actually played pretty decently as well. He completed 16 passes for 279 yards and 1 touchdown. Once again, I don't think he's throwing the ball enough, and that could become a really big problem for the Chargers this year. I think they still have to throw the ball a little bit more, being a passing league. But after scoring 10 points in the first quarter, for the Chargers, they did not score the rest of the way. And that's just never going to be enough to beat the Chiefs. That's how you lose 17-10. You didn't score the rest of the game. Now let's switch over to the Browns and Raiders. There's a lot of frustration going on with the Browns right now. And I don't know who should be more frustrated with who, but I know there's a lot of frustration from the fans to the offensive line to the quarterback to the receivers. I don't know what's going on with Cleveland. A lot of casual fans right now are blaming Deshaun Watson, who is probably who they're saying is the problem, of the Cleveland Browns right now. Deshaun Watson is far from the actual problem of this. Deshaun Watson doesn't really have a good offensive line that's protecting him and giving him any time to throw the ball. Jerome Ford only shows up when he has to be clutch for some reason. If it's just an everyday game, he abnormally plays bad, which is kind of weird. I don't really understand that. Jerry Jeudy, he's out there definitely helping. He is a great receiver, but on the other side of him is Amari Cooper, and he keeps dropping passes when they're crucial moments. That one I still don't understand. Amari Cooper is one of the best route runners in all of the NFL, but he keeps dropping passes all of a sudden. What changed? Is it new gloves? Is it that the gloves are not broken in, so they're far too slick? I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, he has to figure out that situation where he keeps dropping passes. The Raiders are not a bad team, but their offensive coordinator is the old offensive coordinator from the Chicago Bears, who I do not think is the best choice for the Raiders, but they're at 500 right now for their record. I guess you can't be too mad at that, but they need to watch out because I don't know how well he will do with Gardner Minshew to be successful in this year, but we're going to learn a lot from him because we seen what he did with Justin Fields in Chicago. It wasn't good, you know. And their biggest limitation right now, I think, for the Raiders is going to be that offensive coordinator. It's sad to say that, but I just think that's what it is. But for the Browns, they definitely got to clean up this frustration, man. There's too much frustration on that team. I don't know if they got to go into free agency and find someone who can come in and help with that offensive line. I'm sure they can find someone that they can train or maybe someone on that practice squad. They have to have somebody that can come in and help that offensive line because they need it. Deshaun Watson, I hope he can stay healthy, but he's getting hit quite a lot, man. You never know what'll happen. Amari Cooper just start catching the ball. There's a lot of things to clean up for the Browns right now. But their defense, I think, is the strongest key of that team. I think they can help keep them in games. Myles Garrett is an absolute monster on that defense, and they have a great secondary. You know, they just have to put the games together and get help from that offense so that the team can run like a well-oiled machine. That's really all that has to happen, I think. Bills Ravens, man. This was a wake-up call from the Ravens, man. And let's be honest, the Bills, they missed Stephon Diggs. I think they know that they made a big mistake letting that guy go. And, and I think they're finally realizing that mistake. So Josh Allen in this game, he threw for 480 yards and didn't throw for any touchdowns. You know what? I have to double check that. That sounds crazy. Let's double check that. All right. Bills, Ravens. So tell me, let's all be honest with ourselves. Do you guys not think that the Bills miss Stephon Diggs? Because they miss him. Josh Allen threw for 180 yards in this game and didn't throw for any touchdowns. But the game opened up with Derrick Henry going 75 or 70 yards straight down the field. You know, he carried the ball 24 times for 199 yards and one touchdown. So if you had him in your fantasy football team this week, woo, man, you put up some points with that boy. Lamar Jackson no longer has to depend on himself to win these games, man. His team has showed up for him. Isaiah Likely is one of the best tight ends in the NFL right now, probably the best, and that's what we're learning from the Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens, definitely, I think, are the best 2-2 team in the NFL right now. They are also at 500. They're not undefeated or anything like that. This is the NFL. We don't really expect too many teams to be undefeated, but I think they're the best team at 500 record right now. If we have to look forward to this team playing the way that they did against the Bills, man, you might get Lamar Jackson as another MVP of the season again. This guy is playing lights out, and his team around him is helping him so much. So I'm definitely glad to see that for him. The Buffalo Bills, I think, right now are the best team in the AFC East. So I still think that they can definitely make it into the playoffs. I don't know how deep they will run, especially if they run into the Chiefs or something, which is their biggest Achilles heel. But I think they can definitely make a run later on in the season and be the best team in the AFC East, especially with Tua hurt in Miami, and New England definitely is not going to compete with them. The Jets, we don't even know what they are right now. But, you know, they have to go out and develop their players a little bit more for the Bills so that they can compete with the bigger teams in the AFC if they want to make a run at the Super Bowl. But I definitely think I have the Bills right now taking the AFC East 100%. Titans, Dolphins. I think we can all agree that the Dolphins right now are not who they want to be. They have to make sure that they get to a fully healed up and recovered before he comes back. His brain needs it. Do not bring him back too early, before that offense starts clicking again. Tyler Huntley is definitely doing his best. It's not his fault for them being this bad right now. He's just not ready for what Tua was doing. They don't have a backup like Malik Willis or Joe Flacco that can come in and just play all out, lights out. Mason Rudolph for the Titans. He was able to run away with his 131 yards in this game. The Titans were not really tested by Tyler Huntley and the Dolphins offense in this one. Tyler Huntley only threw for 96 yards, and he was the one to rush for a touchdown. So the rest were just field goals in this game. So really there's not much to say about this Titans Dolphins game. Seahawks Lions now. Did this game look like the Lions just came out and said we're not going to be 2-2 today, or was it just me? Because the Lions, for the Seahawks, I mean, the Lions just came out and said you're losing this game today. I don't know what it was. This was definitely a great game, but a really fun game to watch for Monday night. Geno Smith, 38 for 56, 395 yards and one touchdown, one interception. And did you hear what I just said? 395 yards from Geno Smith. How many teams, especially the New York Jets, have failed with Geno Smith? Once again, I keep harping on this. Coaching matters. Geno Smith with the Jets has never done something like this. And now he's doing it as much as he can. Jared Goff, he did something that I can honestly say I've never seen in my lifetime. I'm almost certain it never happened in my lifetime. 18 for 18, 100% completion rate for 292 yards and two touchdowns. I'd have to look up when that has happened. It's probably like in the 1930s or something like that, but definitely not in my lifetime. I just go back to see. I just have to go back and see how many quarterbacks have ever gotten 100% completion rate, and I guarantee you there's not many of those, if any. Maybe it's never happened before that, but I'm sure somebody has done it before, just not in my lifetime. But Jahmyr Gibbs, he came out and carried the ball 14 times for 78 yards, but he had two touchdowns along with that. Then Jameson Williams had two receptions for 80 yards. This almost looks like Madden on rookie mode for him. I don't know why. He's getting so many yards with these receptions, and one touchdown for him. But this was definitely a fun Monday night game to watch, and definitely a good game to close out the week. But definitely tell me what you guys think, man, especially about your team. I cover all the games every week. Definitely let me know what you guys think about these games. We'll talk about it, man. We'll see what we can do with this. All right, fellas, have a good one, man. Peace out.